Welcome to Innovating Music, a podcast from the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music and the UCLA Center for Music Innovation. I'm your host, Dr. Gigi Johnson. I have been an avid follower of Jay LeBoeuf now since soon after he launched Real Industry. It is a unique organization. It's a nonprofit that connects mentors, companies and brands, and 40 different colleges and universities now on challenges to get them to have human connections and understand how real work works in a changing music and technology set of industries. And I think for some of you, this is going to be a podcast where you go, how do I get involved in this great program? That'll be in the show notes as well as at the end of the podcast. So enjoy Jay's story about how he built a unique vehicle for getting people to spend time with each other and build inspiration for next generation music and technology careers. We met when I think you were inquiring about Real Industry in UCLA, or do we meet some other way?
Nope, that was absolutely it. And I believe Jennifer Snow, introduced us.
And that was when you were two schools in? I think you were working with Stanford and Berkeley then?
Yeah, we were Stanford, UC Berkeley, and we were actually just launching our Pandora Challenges program, which is the music business initiative that Real Industry works on.
So I'm excited to have you in the conversation, because you're doing, in some ways, what I wish I could wave a magic wand and magically do, which is create community and coherence around careers. I didn't mean to go with alliteration of 3 C's there, but can you share what in the world you're doing and how in the world you had the impetus to start Real Industry?
Absolutely. So I am the founder and executive director of Real Industry, which is an educational nonprofit. And our mission is to educate, inspire, and empower university students to thrive in the arts and tech industry. And, really the motivation for doing this is solving a problem that I had, and I'm sure a lot of Gigi, maybe you had, and a lot of people who are listening had this. Imagine you're in university through no fault of your own. You just have no idea what you're going to do.
As a student, not as a faculty member, because sometimes we faculty member have no idea. Also.
But totally, but maybe even in your own university days, it's hard to know what you're going to do when you graduate because you actually don't have any industry experience. You're limited to these small windows that you get in the world through an internship. And that might give you a 2 to 3 month insight into how one particular company in one particular industry works. But, when I was in school, I went to Cornell for electrical engineering, and all I knew was that I didn't want to be an electrical engineer. My classwork was not something I enjoyed. I had a few electrical engineering internships, which gave me these little peeks into industry, and so they were useful in the effect that I knew I didn't want to do that, but I had no idea what I did want to do. So in my case, I poured all of my heart and my time and my energy into the band I was playing in college, and we were gigging out on nights and weekends. And
okay, stop. What were you playing, and what were you doing, and what type of music?
Outstanding. I grew up playing piano, but in this band, and for most of my life, I've been a drummer.
Okay.
So we were
You're drumming in Ithaca, New York.
I'm drumming in Ithaca, New York. It is, 1998, 1999 or so. I would say we were, predominantly a cover band, but our original material was very, very Dave Matthews Band inspired. That was kind of the college scene at the time. And I can tell you, I was spending more time rehearsing and playing shows and recording than I was actually studying. And that should have been a tip that I was really passionate about this.
Well, it is kind of cold in Cornell. You need something to do there.
You absolutely do. The other big thing to do there is the fraternity party scene. So we were very big on the music circuit, and that kept us very very entertained. So one of the things that was kind of a big inflection point, and I promise this will get back to real industry, is in my case, I'm spending time in a recording studio. And it's just one of these moments, everybody's sitting in the control room and kind of looking around. And I start seeing all these blinking lights. And, our engineer is sitting behind a monstrous mixing console. So you have all these faders and knobs and buttons. And we're comping together. Basically, we're editing our vocalist's take in Pro Tools and using auto-tune on it. And then it just hit me. Wait a minute. There's a lot of engineering that goes into these tools. And I bet there's a lot of business and a lot of marketing. This whole music production and technology thing, that's an actual thing that I could work on. And this light bulb went off that motivated me not only to finish my studies and take it more seriously, but then to go on to grad school to study this. And I just, I haven't. A lot of university students don't have that light bulb moment where they can connect what they're learning in school to a product that they're passionate about, that they maybe even use every day. So that's what we're trying to do right now, is actually bring some of the most amazing companies and brands, as well as some incredible mentors from industry onto university campuses.
So I'm going to fast forward you to being on a university campus. You got inspired also to do this, my recollection brings me, because you were teaching at an engineering program and finding this opportunity to be ripe?
Yeah. So, at the if you fast forward 15 years later, at that time I was on the executive team of iZotope, which is a prominent music and audio technology company. I was giving a series of guest talks, and I'd be asked to come in and talk about, artificial intelligence and music, or be asked to talk about, how do you make an audio plugin or something like that. And I started pivoting more and more of my talks towards talking about the actual product creation process, and just kind of on a whim. One day I was giving a guest talk at NYU, and I give them their students there the credit. I was talking with students beforehand and just floating a couple of ideas for what I would talk about that day. And I said, why don't I just talk about how a given version of Pro Tools was actually made when I worked there? And they were like, you can do that? That's something that's allowed? I'm like, sure, I'll talk about, it was 9 months long. I'll talk about who all the team members and what their job titles were and what everybody did. And I'll give you a couple anecdotes of, what worked and what didn't work, and, how we prioritize features. And so that guest talk really kind of kicked everything off. That day I kind of decided I have to be one of these industry people that is on university campuses all the time. And I need to get all of our industry mobilized and on campus as well, because that talk was the most engaged talk I ever did. Everybody was leaning forward, taking notes, staying until the very end, because they realized that you really can't get a lot of good industry knowledge on a university campus. It just doesn't happen.
Well, this wasn't in what year was this? This was not that long ago.
This is 2014.
So we still had the beautiful internet that people could go search for this information, but I would contest where the heck and how the heck would they do that or know to look for it, which makes this even more pertinent.
Right. Absolutely.
Because I get comments. So I started teaching 2010 at UCLA. Actually, before it was UCLA Alpert, but UCLA Alpert, around the time it was UCLA Alpert. And my students, even to this day, will sometimes say, well, I looked for it online, I couldn't find it, and I didn't know what to do next on looking for a job in music. Those students, I will challenge them in a different direction quite quickly. But the interest in anticipation for students to not necessarily need to leave campus in this era where they don't have cars, and to go explore on their own. Maybe I just feel old because I was doing that all the time when I was back in film school as a young person. But the sort of the how to indoctrinate this very digital crew into how to find out, I don't know. When you were a younger person, was this something that was much more normal for students to go out and do this exploring on their own?
Well, I mean, one incident that I always like to share with people was it actually relates to how it was the first inflection point of how I thought I wanted to get into music and technology without even knowing it. And it always goes to somebody being around you and inspiring you. So in this case, a Berklee College of Music professor, Dr. Richard Boulanger, happens to be from the same hometown that I am in Massachusetts. And he came to our elementary school and plugs in his acoustic guitar, and he just starts playing for a class assembly. And it starts out being this beautiful acoustic guitar, but Dr. B, being who he is, hits a couple of pedals, tweaks some knobs, and next thing you know, it is, being transformed into duck sounds. And you can imagine how amazing this is when you're a fourth grader, hearing an acoustic guitar and it turned into a duck. And then he, does a little bit more, and now it's a distorted electric guitar. And, the ability to see a human, and I'm sure I could have found YouTube videos. They didn't exist at that time, but nowadays you can find videos and online content for anything. But having someone come in that you can ask questions of, that you can hold in your mind as a potential mentor, as somebody you can reach out to, I strongly believe in that mentorship and that personal inspiration model. And that's actually why I have kind of transitioned away from doing online courses and recording a lot of YouTube content. The first year of Real Industry, our model was, okay, we're going to educate, inspire, and empower university students through doing online classes. And we spent a lot of our time and resources filming these very high production value interviews that you can have thousands and thousands of people watch them, but there's really no tangible measure that you're making an impact. And when you do it through a university campus visit, or visiting a school, or even sitting down with a handful of students, does that scale? Well, no, it doesn't scale as well, but does it have impact? If that's what you really want to have, nothing in my mind can beat experiential education.
And you found, or at least seem to have found from looking at this from the outside, that there is almost a human energy marketplace of people who want to mentor, and companies who want to reach out into the schools, and companies who want to sponsor challenges. Can you describe a little bit more about the model you moved into? I was going to say wandered into, but I think it was anything but a wander that you moved into that created then a marketplace of the mentorship and challenges.
Absolutely. And I love that phrase, a human energy marketplace. I'm definitely going to write that down. It's fantastic. So, this is my first nonprofit. And one thing that I can, explain for anybody who might wonder, how is a nonprofit different than, a startup? If you treat your nonprofit as if it's a startup, it'll be the best thing you ever do. So applying all those same principles, we were trying out online courses, and I was trying some university classes, and I was trying all these different models for how we could impact university students. And it's really tough because the students weren't finding strong impact. But the other thing you need to do as part of any business is you have to figure out how to keep the lights on and how to bring in money. So, I just started connecting with a number of friends in industry, and one person who was, he was on our board and is a good friend now, Mike Herring. Mike was the chief financial officer and president of Pandora for a long time. So I started bouncing ideas off of Mike, when he came to do a classroom visit, and saying, Mike, what would make Pandora excited about, helping out university students. Like, how could I get you guys to support the work we're doing with real industry? And, he just said, he's like, well, I love sitting in front of, classrooms of students. Maybe we could, do a challenge for them, or, we could do a hackathon or something like that. And we kind of kept riffing with it and discovered this design challenges model. So, a lot of credit I still give to Pandora, because they are, real industry's largest corporate supporter, and we've done the most number of design challenges with them. And what that model is you basically, it's a 2-week on-campus event where you do a kickoff at the university. So usually about 100 students attends this kickoff. And at the kickoff, you give them a challenge. So, for some of the Pandora challenges, these were music and social impact challenges. And you bring in a bunch of industry mentors, you bring in a ton of unique resources and maybe access to data, to software development kits, to things that university students don't otherwise have access to. And then you just kind of engage the students to work on that challenge for about 2 weeks, and then, submit the results and present them at the very end.
Well, let me ask a little bit of clarifying question here. So I know when you got started, a lot of this was engineering and more technical-ish students. Mm-hmm. How did this grow into being more cross-campus, or did this still thrive in a more technical environment?
Indeed. In fact, we actually break it into kind of two different tracks, or two different themes of challenges that we end up doing. There are the technically oriented design challenges, or maybe like the product design challenges. And then there are kind of the content creation challenges. So, our music business challenges are a great example of content creation, where maybe you're working on a digital marketing plan, or you are actually, growth hacking to try to increase the number of plays of, a certain playlist that, has goals in mind for the artist. Another great example of a content creation challenge that we actually just kicked off last week. So that was January 24th. We kicked off a challenge at the University of Michigan in partnership with Facebook. And this was a immersive audio 360 audio challenge, where we give the students several 360 videos to choose from. We have them form teams. We give each team an Oculus Go VR headset to use. We give them a ton of instructions, office hours, mentorship from the Facebook guys. And what we do is we want them to create their very first immersive audio tracks, that they've ever created. And we look at this as, here's this new medium.
Actually, I'm going to ask you to stop and define immersive audio.
Absolutely. So, immersive audio is, can go by many names: 3D audio, 360 audio. But the simplest way to think about it is, when you walk out into your natural world, you can very clearly hear that there's a bird chirping right above your head, and there's somebody talking to you who's slightly off to the right, and then there's a car that just drove past you, and it's about 200 feet behind you. These are things that we can very easily localize. And as we spend more and more time consuming virtual content, one of the first things that breaks down that perception that you're actually in a virtual world is you need great audio. So, I've seen some VR content, which will be a live concert, but then the concert's only mixed in stereo. So you just have audio coming out of the left ear and the right ear, but you have no perception that there's things in front of you, behind you, above you. That sense of immersion is gone.
Or when you move your head, the audio is not moving. There's no panning along with it as well.
Absolutely. The VR people would say, okay, the content isn't headlocked. And so that whole imagery just kind of breaks down, the realism breaks down, and your brain just kind of has this, moment, because that should be happening. And as the visuals track in real time with low latency and are increasingly more real, we really need the audio to do that as well. And
so what type of students then? And this is both understanding something about music, audio, and tracks, understanding something about, I'm assuming, plugins, I'm assuming you're doing this in Unity or something else. So you're needing students who are kind of bimodal, who are both creative and technical, or what type of students came to this challenge at University of Michigan?
Great question. We put the call out, and we specifically, we didn't tell them what major they should have in order to be successful. We actually gave them the roles that we wanted them to serve. So one of them, we said, we need a lead audio engineer. And in this case, the tool of choice that we're using is Avid Pro Tools.
Okay.
And we're doing this because we're doing it for cinematic VR. So this is, traditional linear. You hit the space bar, and the content rolls start to finish. The user can look around in the content and explore, but it's non-interactive. So it's 360 video. 360 video, correct?
Okay.
So we wanted to use Avid Pro Tools for this, and Pro Tools, as many of you know, is a very deep product. And so we wanted somebody on the team to say, I'm going to be the Pro Tools person. I'm going to be the lead engineer. And also, you need a reasonably powerful computer. You need Pro Tools Ultimate, which is a $1,000 a year subscription. So we wanted people to apply for that role.
And was Avid a sponsor of the project?
Yes, Avid very generously donated copies of Avid Pro Tools Ultimate so the students could get involved, because they're really interested to see what the students are doing with their tools.
Cool.
So
you had lead audio engineer.
We had the lead audio engineer, and then we had two other roles. We said we want to approach this like it's a real, audio post-production process. So we want the team to look like that. So you're going to have a lead audio engineer who's going to assemble, mix, and do the final edits. But we also want a sound designer. So in this case, you can have one or more sound designers per team. And what's so great about this role is your major doesn't matter. The tools that do not matter. You're only limited by your creativity. So the sound designer's role is to find, record, edit, curate, create the sounds that are to be a part of this immersive audio world. So in this role, one of the tools we provided with students, we provide them with access to Pro Sound Effects, which is a cloud-based audio and sound effects library. So they generously donated the tools for students to use for sound effects work. But we also encourage students to, go out with a handheld recorder, or, use the mic on your iPhone or your Android device to go out, record some sounds, and then use your favorite digital audio workstation to kind of build up these soundscapes. The final role we had was what we called, you are the music supervisor. So you have an immersive world. It's a great opportunity to either put together some existing tracks. We provided students with some music stems that were all broken out, so students could remix them in 360 if they want, or some of the composers who are part of the Michigan project are actually going out and they're creating works specifically for 360 right now.
Cool. So you have a variety of parties, both contributing equipment, bringing their students to bear, companies who are putting the challenges out. How do they get sold in, but how do they then measure their human ROI for participating in this?
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody, it's one of the things that even if you're pursuing a nonprofit initiative where, it should be that the outcome is we are empowering the future leaders of our industry. And for a healthy industry, we should all give back. I wish I could say that everybody participated and gave so generously of their time only for that. But we can be real, and we know that every company has competing demands and a huge list of priorities that they need to hit. So for companies that participate, usually falls into a few things. Recruiting is often a very key thing that companies are looking for, and by that, more specifically, I mean employer branding. And what employer branding is, think about the typical university career fair model, where all the companies show up at the same day. They all have their Costco tables all next to each other, and that model is amazingly still around. And you have a lot of empathy for the small audio company or the small indie label that no one's heard of, because people aren't queuing up to give their resumes to that company and to ask those people questions. They're lining up behind the Googles, the Amazons, the Universal Music Groups. Everybody's just kind of going for the big names because that's who they know. And employer branding basically means you need to do something to make your brand known, so that way a student or a professional is aware of what you're doing and thinks it's actually cooler than one of those more established brands. So that's one of the biggest successes we've seen as a nonprofit, is being able to do some matchmaking from companies that are really looking to scout and hire the best and brightest, but want a differentiated way of engaging with those students. And I see a great opportunity for these companies to come on campuses, for them to donate to our organization and support the work we're doing. In the process of a design challenge, students happen to work on their products. We don't blatantly say, work on this technology design challenge for Bose and you will get a job. Rather, if we do a good job, of course, students are going to think that Bose is a very cool company and Sonos is a very cool company. And if we don't do a good job, then that whole thing just falls apart.
How does the school measure success, and what are they having to put on the table to play?
Yeah, so
because there's a lot of competing interests and actually competing parties at a university, right? You have the career centers, you've got the departments, who I'm assuming you're getting the opportunity to work with a blend of the two.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If I think about most of the universities we work with, the career centers are the most underutilized places on university campuses. And the career centers know this and are excited to get students more involved with considering their future careers and starting to think about future roles, mentorship, and recruiting possibilities. When I work with different departments, oftentimes we work with the departments that don't otherwise have access to these type of companies, mentors, and resources. Universities are very good at putting on events. I'm sure at UCLA on any given night, there's 15 competing concerts and info sessions and amazing outside people coming onto campus. And one gap that Real Industry has been trying to fill is bringing companies and forging connections between departments that don't otherwise have access to these materials and companies that see a great chance to partner with them and be part of the process.
So when it's done, how does everyone figure that they've thrived? I mean, beforehand, I understand the logic for this. I'm willing to do it. But when they're done, do they survey students? Do they, take a look at their hires? I mean, I'm assuming you get a lot of repeat business from folks. I'm asking this because I actually do a lot of career programs and projects myself. And a lot of it is, how do you get all the parties to want to come back and do this a second time? And universities have different metrics than companies do.
Absolutely. So for both universities and companies, this is something that we can all agree on. We do so we have qualitative and quantitative feedback. The qualitative feedback, that's the easiest to measure. Usually the students are having an incredible time. They give us fantastic quotes, incredible testimonials. We have all these, incredible stories of students that, are discovering their passion for what they want to do, discovering a new career role, and like this is their inspiration point for their future careers. Numerically, we do it through impact surveys. So, one of the things that we're most proud of is we ask students, if it were not for real industry, would you have had access to these type of skills and workshops and resources that we're providing you? And last year, for example, in 2018, 86% of the students that we worked with said that they would not have had access to any of these materials if it weren't for real industry. And this really helps us show that we're not replacing anything that the university is doing. We're actually augmenting the students' experience, and we're helping to take what students are learning in their classes and just apply it in a, in this case, in a unapologetically real world design challenge that's proposed by a company. That really hits home for us.
So who is us now? So you started this from dreams, aspirations, and seeing an opportunity, and we're in a changing environment where jobs are changing and the way music is being created is changing. What have you kind of grown into, and where are you wanting to grow to? Those are kind of two separate questions.
Absolutely. So in order to grow something like this, I could not have done this without having had an amazing network of friends, industry colleagues, basically everybody that I've kept in touch with from my first internships up through, when I was at iZotope and when I was, starting to do some guest teaching at Stanford. When you have a big project such as real industry, what you need to do is draw upon the collective, goodwill of that entire network to let them know what you're working on, and then to ask for help. So right now, I'm thrilled. We have 400 industry mentors that are willing to be part of this. I know it's incredible, and they are like our superhuman strength. As a team, we're only 4 people full time, but we're 4 people full time. Last year, we put on, I believe it was 16 or 17 of these large multi-campus design challenges. We count companies like Pandora, Facebook, Sonos, Bose as some of our lead sponsors. That's not because I'm able to do all this by myself. It's because we have such a great network of people who are volunteering, who are always kind of looking out for us, and who want university students to succeed.
So your roadmap, you've got this great network, you've got traction, you've got ground speed, you have, I'm assuming, a very busy personal schedule. What do you need, and what do you see that companies and colleges need and students need that people who listen to this podcast may be able to reach in and help with, or that they see themselves on your roadmap? Where are you going?
Where are we going? So we have served 40 universities over the past 4.5 years that I've been doing this, which is incredible. But we're only scratching the surface of the universities that we can serve. And one of the things that we need to do is we need to scale. So that's something that we're actively talking about, and I'm working with our mentors and our board on, is how do we scale the real industry model to support every university that wants us on their campus, and how do we enable any company that wants to mentor students at a campus to get more actively involved. So I think our most valuable role going forward is to be that bridge, and is to be that, I've heard it described as, we're, just being an intelligent router. So, that's the best way that I would encourage anybody who's listening in that does want to help out. If you're a university that does want something like this on your campus, on our website, there's a Get Involved button in the upper right. That's a great way to let us know that you're interested, and we will do our best to bring our programming there. And if we can't for any reason, we will ensure you have access to all the industry people you need to support your students. Same thing for companies. We have a lot of inbound requests of companies that maybe want to donate some tools, or they're interested in supporting students in a particular location. Well, that's a fantastic way for Real Industry to be able to help out, is to know that we have some inbound requests from universities. We have companies that have resources, and then we can play the bridge between academia and industry that way.
So, having come off of a recent nonprofit board and having been on several, are you needing more people with money? Are you growing a bigger money board? Are there other ways that companies on the leadership end could help you?
Well, absolutely. So one of the ways that one of the things I never knew about a nonprofit was how it actually brought in money. So the first,
I know that dream. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so for anybody that actually is wondering, like, how does a nonprofit make money? The interesting thing is, yes, you do have. I mean, it's like a startup once again that can make money from basically any possible way aside from issuing shares and doing angel and venture investment. So what we did with Real Industry, we have it right now. We're about probably about 75% of what it takes to put on these programs is from corporate sponsors, and these are corporate sponsors who are able to underwrite all of the costs for a design challenge. So we don't really expect the universities to write a big check for this thing to happen. We look to the companies that often have the resources and will get the most benefit to help us support these students. So always looking for amazing brand partners, companies, anybody who's willing to, interested to come on a campus. We would, love your support and love to use this to power more workshops. The remaining 25% of what we're doing is actually sponsored by individuals. So, we do have a board of directors, and they give quite generously. And we also really just started our own philanthropic initiatives, where this past November 2018, we had a gala event in San Francisco at the Great American Music Hall, and this is where our industry mentors, for the first time, had the opportunity to financially donate to Real Industry. So this is something we're growing as well, where we have a lot of universities that we want to hit that we can't serve through corporate partners. And we have some programming that we want to do, which is outside of something that a corporate partner would be willing to donate to support. And that's also something that we really want to raise our individual giving on.
So I have a last question of coming from my side of this, and that is, you have a unique vantage point of talking with many companies about the types of people they're looking for and the changes that they're seeing in their industry and companies. What are you seeing as the trends in what companies are looking to young people to come in to do in their organizations?
So I'd say two things that I really try to highlight because I love the time that I get to spend with all these hiring managers and HR directors to talk about what they're looking for. So increasingly, companies are looking for experience, and this might seem like a catch-22. I mean, how do you, as a student, demonstrate that you have experience in digital marketing? Or experience in spatial audio when you haven't actually worked at that company yet, or you haven't, had a lot of internships doing it. And this is where, we coach the students that, listen, the companies don't expect you to have that real world, like being paid to do it experience. They want you to see that you're doing stuff outside of the classroom that is pushing your boundaries, that you are learning things that your professors aren't teaching you. So this could be volunteering for an organization. It could be doing digital marketing on your friend's band and testing out new techniques, and then going for that Google SEO certification or that HubSpot certification for marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And these are all ways that you can demonstrate that you actually have more experience, because that's a trend. There's just so many amazing hires out there that the bar is higher, that people want people with more experience coming out. The other thing that is actually a soft skill that just seems to, I'm not sure it's lacking any more than when I was in school, but all of us in industry are much more aware of it now, is follow-up. So what we want is people that are just absolutely tenacious about a given job post. So, politely following up on the status of, your internship request, or, another great example. I mean, I coordinate so many guest speakers coming up onto campuses, and I will watch a guest speaker basically say, hey, this is what I do. And if any of you have any questions, or if you need an introduction to anybody else at the company, please reach out to me. I'll stand up here. I'll hand out my business cards. Please reach out to me if you have any more information. And I will watch 95% of the students just barrel out of the back of the room and never come back. And only a tiny handful that stand at the front of the room getting that person's business card. And then even a tiny fraction of that actually follow up with that guest speaker. And that's just really a shame, because I think for so many students, if you truly want to be part of, let's say if it's the music industry, if you truly want to go into the music industry, then why not use the odds towards your favor and go up to every guest speaker at the end of the class, everybody who comes in to visit your class or visit your university, introduce yourself, get their contact information, thank them for coming in, make them part of your network. And, that is really kind of the key to success. But unfortunately, 95% of students just don't follow up on even, an offer like that.
And that's it. I mean, or the universities that you're talking to. I find interesting also, I'll talk with students and they'll say, I'll do it at the end of the quarter or the end of the semester. It's like, well, then you're not top of mind anymore. We had a student who walked up and was talking to someone this past term, and by the end of the break ended up with an internship, as a person needed somebody right now to do an internship, and it happened to be the right time, the right moment, the right conversation. And I'm setting up those great planned happen chances. I cannot emphasize enough how important that is. So appreciate that.
Absolutely. There's a trick that I've used for years that I encourage anybody to try out, which is, let's say you go to a 1-day long conference. In order to actually follow up on all of the connections, opportunities, discussions, thank yous that you probably made at that one day long conference, you should allocate the following day after that just towards that correspondence. And now you can start seeing, wow, if you're at a 4-day conference, or you're off at South by Southwest, you truly need to just take the following week and just reserve it for phone calls, thank you notes, emails. That's really what it takes. But I
would say for South by, I need maybe a couple weeks afterwards to recover, but that's a whole nother thing with
absolutely.
But let people have a gigantic stack of business cards, and then they don't know who that person was, what they did. I'm always telling everyone to write on the business card what time it was, what you said, and have that as that prompt. Of course, I'm bad at that. I'll have a gigantic box of business cards later, go, what the heck was that card for? Thank you. This has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed watching what you do grow. Do you have any last comments to wrap up the conversation? Well, last questions? Things I didn't ask.
Yeah, I want to, first off, thank you for the great work that you're doing in teaching students these soft skills and things that, even those of us in industry, we know that we should be doing them and we can get better at. This is the most important work that I've ever worked on. And, for a lot of these things, if you might work on a technology product and then you're excited because, maybe 5% of, the music industry maybe uses it and cares about it. Or you work on an album and you release it and you have some fans that it's really important and pivotal to them. But then a lot of other people don't know about it and maybe don't care about it. What I love about what I'm doing right now with Real Industry, and a way that our industry can kind of get back and support students is, we were all students at some point who were completely clueless about how the industry and the real world actually worked. And this is, it's just a great way to bring everybody together so we can support all the students who do want our help. So if anybody is interested in helping out, either as a mentor, as a company that wants to get involved, or even a university that we can help out as well. My full-time job is to be that intelligent router and just kind of help add value to every interaction. So really, really thrilled.
So to follow up, they would go to realindustry.org and hit the Get Involved button on the upper right-hand corner and follow you on other socials. Is there a place to follow you or follow on other means, things that are going on with Real Industry?
Absolutely. The most active channel for us is actually still our email list. Email will not go away. We have great engagement rates there, and that's absolutely the best way to stay involved with what we're doing.
Thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate the conversation and continuing to be a fangirl for all your great work.
Thank you, Gigi.
Well, that wraps up this podcast. Many thanks to the UCLA Herb Alpert School of Music and the UCLA Center for Music Innovation for being our hosts of this ongoing series. You can subscribe to us in all the usual places, or you can come find us at innovation.schoolofmusic.ucla.edu. Join us again to follow the other adventures that we will be tracking down in innovating music. Thanks again.